we're back. This is Adam Dragoon with the Heart2Hartley podcast. I'm sitting across the table from Mr.
Albert Hartley.
And we're glad you're here listening to this podcast. I believe we're on episode number 4. And so we're glad you are with us along for this journey. We've been talking about some interesting topics, and we want to jump right in. Mr. Hartley, what do you have for us today?
Well, I want to talk quickly about capacity. This is something I've been developing in my own life and some of the personal things I've been working through. Therapy, some other things, interaction with my family, my wife, and my kids. And I've been sort of trying to distill the things that I think are important and having to deal with capacity. So let me just briefly say this. When something happens to you, okay, a challenge, whether it's financial, whether it's whatever, if there's a challenge coming your way, okay? And this could be a kid going to school for the first day, okay? I really believe we're made up in 3 parts, okay? We have a spiritual part, we have an emotional part, and we have what I call an analytical part, your brain.
Okay.
And what I would like for you to see is that let's assume they're reservoirs, okay? And each person is born with the genetic capacity and an inclination toward one or the other, right? So I have 2 daughters. They're distinctly different human beings, obviously. We have different fingerprints, right? Everybody's unique.
Yep.
But they're also uniquely situated for capacity, right? My eldest daughter has a high capacity for emotional insight and understanding. She communicates well with that. She picks up on people's feelings. She navigates those things very well. My other daughter has some capacity for that, but she's highly analytical. So she doesn't see nuances around certain people's emotions. She sees the analytical part of it, the pragmatism of everything. Well, so if we look at 3 things, right? When you're born into the world, you have an inclination because you've been born a certain way. You have your mother and father's genetic capacity, but you also may be more inclined to mathematics and science. So that may make you more analytical. Your spiritual and emotional reservoirs may not be as full in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So when something comes your way, you're going to handle that issue in the capacity that you have available. Okay, so for example, someone's died, right? That's a complicated situation.
Yeah.
What we typically like to do is to project on other people our level of capacity. Okay? Meaning, if you're an analytical person, you believe everybody should be analytical.
Right.
And let's see, are the bills being paid? What's the life insurance like? And the person you're dealing with is like, I don't want to deal with any of it. Because they're having it. I just want to get the fact of the emotional. Well, their capacity is highly emotional. So they're picking up all the emotional data that's coming into that situation. Okay. And this kind of ties into the idea of resources we've talked about before in the podcast. Okay. So the mistake is, and the conflict that we create is when we expect someone to react to a situation in the same capacity levels that we do. Right. I don't react to something emotionally sometimes because I don't have the capacity for that.
Right.
So something small taps me out.
Yeah.
Now, problem solving, I'm good.
Yeah.
I got analytical capacity. I can draw on that reservoir for days.
Right.
Almost to the point of people are like, how are you continuing to do it? Well, I get off on that. I enjoy that. If I have to talk to someone emotional, they start crying on me. I'm like, right. I don't want to, just, what are you doing? Stop. I don't want to deal with that. Spirituality, right? And these are things that we can work on. You may not be a great analyst, but you can become more analytical.
Absolutely.
You may not be great emotionally, right? And I talk to guys about this who are married who don't understand that their wives, okay, or what I call their compliments, typically don't mirror the same capacities they have.
Right.
So you're analytical, you meet someone emotional, right? The problem is if we don't submit to each other in those areas, then what ends up happening, we don't have any compassion for the capacity of other people. Mm-hmm. Why are you so emotional? And the response is, because I'm emotional.
Yeah.
Why are you so analytical? Because that's how I process really serious things.
Yeah.
So I just think it's interesting that we assume that our genetic makeup, how we're born, that's how we are. And we believe that if we get educated, that fixes those capacities. Well, that's just naive. Mm-hmm. Okay. If we're not spiritual, we need to become more spiritual. If we're not emotional, we need to understand our emotions. That might take some therapy. That might take some church. Right. You may have, I don't understand why she's sad about that. I don't connect. Well, that doesn't mean she's not supposed to be sad.
Yeah.
Now, I struggle with this. Let me be very clear. If it was up to me, the world would be very clear and analytical, and A would be B and B would be A.
Right.
It wasn't until I had 2 daughters that I had to want to connect to, or I want to connect to them, that I have to say to my youngest, listen, we have to acknowledge that feeling is relevant. Don't dismiss that feeling. Now, it may not be the same level that you would have, nor should it have the same level they're putting on it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because, right, so we got to modulate those capacities. So the reason I say that is if you have a funeral to go to, right, and you're feeling detached, you should be careful how you interact with people.
Yeah. I was going to try to jump in and tell you.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just babbling on.
It's quite all right. It's good stuff. What I was going to say is that when you have another person with different capacities, often people get offended when you don't have the same capacity. I'm dealing with a person right now who is almost going through the same situation that you were describing, who had a death in the family and had a very emotional response to it. She's a very emotional girl and is feeling the weight of the loss of this person in her life. And she's having a hard time because family members are having a hard time with insurance money. And you know, her response to that has been, you people don't care anything about you. And so she's backing away. She's doing damage to her family because of this. And so it can be a very offensive if it's not dealt with properly.
Well, let me add something to that. It's really fascinating. Okay. I think what ends up happening, and this has happened to me and I've had to work through it. When something happens to you as a small child or your gift set gets rewarded as a kid, right? So for me, school was a gift set of rewards. Okay. Now, no one acknowledged the level of anxiety I had in my life because it didn't look like I had any. I was completely tore up all the time. I'm a high anxiety dude. Like, is she okay? Are they okay? Or whatever? Because I have catastrophic thinking. So for me, one little thing creates the world's over. Okay. Well, as a 9-year-old kid, that can be debilitating.
Yeah.
It resulted in insomnia. It resulted in depression. It resulted in chronic anxiety. It resulted in incapacitating attacks of anxiety while performing at a high level. Because I was performing at my reservoir level, my analytical level, right? So I was doing well in school, but I was a wreck.
Yeah.
So, but here's what happens. When you get results from using the reservoir that gets awarded, you suppress the other stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And you push forward with the stuff that works.
You run with your strengths and you ignore your weaknesses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my mentor always says, we focus on our strength and improve our weaknesses.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you're a kid, you don't know how to do that because you don't have the capacity, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I've always found it's funny. My wife and I have been together since we were 15, right? And I love my wife. But for me, she met every criteria I had as a 15-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. She's beautiful. Check, right? I'm sorry. I'm shallow. I was not going to date an ugly person. Not going to happen. But her personality, if you met my wife, she is steady Eddie, baby. I mean, I'm like, and if she could cut her arm off and be like, after we're done with this conversation, I would like to go to the hospital in order for them to reattach my arm. But don't rush.
Yeah.
It's good. Don't rush.
Go with the flow.
Right? Me, I'm like, I'm swinging my arm around. It's all great. So her capacity for level-headedness met a really deficiency in the reservoir of that for me. I had a high capacity for spirituality things because I enjoyed that part of it. It gave me peace. Mm-hmm. And I pursued that from a small age, and I got a lot out of it, and I still do. To assume that everybody has the same level of capacity in spiritual matters is really selfish. And I am a selfish human being. I have to think, should I do this? Oh, that's selfish. I should do something else. But what ended up helping me when I said, okay, wait, when I meet someone and I say, what is your capacity for emotional things? I ask them. They're like, I really am uncomfortable with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something. Let's talk about this from an analytical point of view. And what you do is you keep the other stuff over here so they can view it. Mm-hmm. And then what I talk about is a shopping cart, okay? And you're going through life and you got a shopping cart and you like to pick up the stuff that you've got capacity for. All right? So, for example, I love Oreos, okay?
Okay.
I love them, dude.
Yeah.
I will eat a whole box of Oreos.
I know what to get you next Christmas.
Don't do it. That's why I'm so fat. But listen, now, so for example, my wife, she loves grilled cheeses. I've never had a grilled cheese in my life. Never ate one in my life.
Yeah.
And she says, if you tried it, you would like it. Well, I don't have a capacity for grilled cheese, but I have a capacity for Oreos.
Yeah.
And my capacity for Oreos is boundless. Okay. But you see what I'm saying? So so when someone says, well, I can only eat one or two, well, you're a lightweight.
Yeah.
So if I start projecting on them, oh, you should like them as much as I like them.
Yeah.
Then I'm ignoring their capacity that's different than mine.
Yeah.
And then when you get into conflicts with family or kids or whatever, being able to have them acknowledge, okay, look, I'm working toward one of my strengths when I should improve one of my weaknesses.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
A picture came into my head. It's like when you go to shop at Sam's Club, you
Yes.
have to really be careful because you realize that very quickly you run out of space in your cupboards and in your refrigerator.
Right.
Yeah, and so some people's refrigerators are bigger than others.
And look, and Adam, what I love about that is the context. And in the context of Sam's Club, 17,000 ounces of anything seems normal.
Right.
But have you ever seen someone get home and they're taking out this huge thing of ranch dressing? You're like, my Lord, who's eating that much ranch dressing? Right? But it's because it's out of context.
That's
right.
right.
And they're like, no, I love ranch dressing. Yeah, but in the context of Sam's Club, everything's the same. We don't operate that way. And so the person who's struggling with a death, that's a perfect example of everybody's capacity is to deal with a complex issue. Mm-hmm. They're going to move to their strength and they're going to ignore their weakness.
That's right.
And they have to be clear that that's not the same thing as passing judgment on somebody. Mm-hmm. It's just operating to what works for them.
Yeah.
And some people don't figure that out until they're 90 years old.
Yeah. If ever.
If ever.
Yeah. And that's when, I think that's also when it's really important that we have good relationships in life. Marriage relationship is key. Like you said, your wife is a perfect complement to you. But some people think that I need to find somebody who's a lot like me. I need to find somebody with the same strengths and weaknesses. And you end up marrying that person. It's a mistake because then you're both struggling at the same time over the same issues.
Well, and also I trust her. Like I trust my wife. Mm-hmm. So I say to her, listen, I'm obsessing over this. And she says, okay, sweetie, let that go. It's okay. And so I'm abdicating authority over that to her because I need her to tell me I've got some defective thinking around this particular thing. I trust her, and therefore I can let that go.
Yeah.
If she and I are the same, then we're just spinning each other up to the end of the world, right? And I also think that's one of the reasons there's 52% of divorce rate, right? 50% divorce rate. Because those compliments you got to compliment so you can calibrate.
Yeah.
So that's one of the tips, right? You compliment so you can calibrate. And if you can calibrate, then you can survive pretty much anything. Yeah. But I just wanted to touch base on this, the idea of reservoirs of capacity. That really helped me when something came into me that I was not handling well. And I was like, why am I? I need to identify that. That's an emotional issue, which I need help on. Yeah. That's a spiritual issue I need help on. That's an analytical issue, but it has an emotional component. So I'm only focused on the analytical and I'm ignoring the emotional and hurting people in the process. Yeah. Okay. That's a mistake.
What would you say to the person who's listening to this right now and maybe they recognize this problem in themselves? What would be the quickest way for them to see some change?
Well, two things. Number one, get a good assessment, right? Some churches have we did this thing at our church years ago, which was called a assessment, like a spiritual assessment. And I failed the mercy stuff. Yeah. Like if there was like a negative number, I got negative, like that person's stupid, they should die. And my wife was the exact opposite. Wow. And she's like, honey, how did you fail the mercy test? You're not even deficient. You're defectively deficient. Okay. That really helped me to understand that I got to ask a second question. So that's the real tip there. Identify what your strength is and how you deal with things. And if you have an emotional response to something, you're typically more emotional. Well, that means you may have to temper yourself, right? And then ask the second question. Is my first reaction what I'm at capacity with or am I lacking capacity for? And what is the so I was teaching my girl something the other day and I said, can you give me a 360 analysis of that problem? Can you give me an analysis of it emotionally, spiritually, and analytically, please? And what it was is Analytically, they had it down.
Mm-hmm.
The spiritual one stumped them because there was a moral question there that needed to be dealt with. The emotional, they almost had it, but they were lacking some empathy around it and some sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
And when they added that to it, it tempered the other stuff. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when you start asking yourself, can you give me the three parts of that problem? The analytical, the emotional, and the spiritual? And they can communicate that to you? Man, you really start to get to hone in on what I call the reconciliation of the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Without those questions, you're only dealing with one part of it. It's like only dealing with one side of the Rubik's Cube. You can't do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I think that's really helpful. And I think people out there, if you have any questions about this, we'd love to hear feedback. There's a way that you can provide feedback on our website. There's a little button you can push and leave a voicemail for us. And we could even put that on the air in future podcast episodes.
That'd be cool.
We can also receive your emails. You can send any emails to heart2hartley@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear, maybe you've got a question about something you heard on one of these podcasts, and we'd love to bring greater clarity and understanding to that.
Or a complaint. I'm okay with that. Like, it'd be good to get some criticism.
Yeah, some feedback would be good. Positive or negative is always good. And maybe you've got a good topic idea that we could tackle. We would love to hear that as well. Bottom line, we want to say thank you for listening, and we want to say please share, please subscribe, please review on iTunes. All of those things really help us. And for now, we'll see you next time on the Heart to Hartley podcast. I'm Adam Dragoon.
And I'm Albert Hartley.
And we hope to see you again soon. Hey there, this is Adam from the Heart to Hartley podcast. Wanted to just give you a quick update about something that we are launching very soon. Albert Hartley has recorded some very powerful instructional videos that we're going to be releasing on Vimeo. These are going to be on-demand videos, and what that means is you'll be able to rent or buy them either separately or as a total package. And so we're getting very, very excited about this product. We think that this will be useful for so many people in so many different scenarios. And so we want to ask you to begin taking a look at that. If you will go to our website, heart2hartley.com, and you look over on the top right side of that page, you'll find a link for all these instructional videos. And so these are going to be launching. They're going to be available for pre-order, which means if you purchase them now, you can get a great price. You're going to get them at a deep discount, much cheaper than they will be after we release them. Big release day is going to be January 15th. And so keep that in mind. We'd ask you to go check out our website, heart2hartley.com. And again, the promotional videos are going to be up in the top right-hand corner of the page. And so if you would check those out, check out our promotional price. It is only available in this pre-order period. So we want to ask you to go check those out, and we would appreciate your support. Thanks again from Heart to Hartley Podcast.